Hello and welcome. As always, if you want to read this on your own, there's a link below down in the description box. Let's get right into Title Update 1.1.1 or 2.10 or 1.011. It can be pretty confusing. Here's the patch sizes: Series XS, Series X 7.5 gigs, 6.6 on the Xbox One. PS5 is under 2 gigs. PS4 is 2 to 3 gigs, and PC is roughly 6.5 gigs. Ubisoft Connect achievements are now here. Added in-game support for Ubisoft Connect achievements to the game. Unlock conditions for quest-related or not repeatable achievements. Achievements where unlock conditions have been met will pop when the player completes a new quest. Unlock conditions for countable repeatable achievements. Achievements will pop whenever the player performs an achievement-related action past the unlock condition. Miscellaneous. The Animus Pulse will now highlight dead bodies for necessary situations only. Enemies can no longer be auto-looted using the throw weapon perk. Tweaked AI detection when using disguise while dodging or while being in air. Added a reward to the Death Stranding homepage. Homage. Quivers and rations will now refill when upgrading them while they are depleted. White dots hinting at rations, adrenaline, arrow loot beyond interaction range will no longer be displayed when the player has max quantity already. Players will now be able to use Wake Up at any time while in Asgard. Previously, you had to complete the first quest. Daily quests will now reset whenever the game detects that it's not possible to continue or restart the quest. The quest may then be reactivated at the Informer. Added text-to-speech to letters found in-game. Added previews to colorblind and subtitle options. Balancing. Tweaked damage dealt and received values for the Lost Wolf boss encounter to reduce friction when playing on Drenger difficulty. Rebalanced initial damage dealt with Harpoon Impalement, level 1s and 2. Game improvements, performance and stability. Just improved the performance and stability. Plain and simple. Graphics, audio, and animation. Addressed various graphics issues, clipping issues, NPC animation issues, or issues that caused dummies to jitter when hit with a poison arrow. Shake it off. Spoilers. Incoming 3, 2, 1. Added some electricity to Mjolnir before picking it up, aka the Thor axe? Or mace? Or hammer? I'm half asleep. Anyways, addressed an issue where war cries would repeat or loop oddly. Addressed an issue when blowing the horn and starting to move with left foot forward could sometimes make Ivor's feet glide. It was kind of like a moonwalk. Photo mode addressed an issue where zooming in on children with the photo mode camera would distort their face, as it should, because that's just some creepy shit. Addressed an issue where some raven skins could be low resolution. PS4 optimized some textures on PS4. Addressed a texture issue near the Cicester Abbey, I butchered that caused players to desync when walking over the texture. Quests, world events, side activities. Addressed an issue in Legend of Beowulf where the clue marker would remain after it was investigated. Addressed an issue in a sticky situation where the NPC would sometimes not spawn, or an issue where the player could get stuck fishing in the baker's plate, or an issue in Fishing Lesson that under certain circumstances prevented players from completing the world event, or an issue where players are stuck after pledging to the Lincolnshire, after returning from Vinland, or an issue where players could get stuck in a boss fight during a cruel destiny. Ah, yes, a cruel destiny indeed. Or an issue where some treasures wouldn't be at their location or couldn't be looted. Grandbridgeshire, Hamptonshire, Oxfordshire, all the places that end in a shire, essentially. Addressed an issue where players could receive an online service error when trying to save, or an issue where players got a black screen after building the blacksmith, or an issue where players didn't receive storming the walls after completing severing the lines, or an issue and to serve the light where Hytham would get stuck on the boat when randomly shooting arrows into the water, or an issue that prevented players from interacting with settlement NPCs, or an issue that prevented players from completing clues and riddles, or an issue in the absence of an elderman that prevented players from completing the quest, or an issue where the quest objective markers was pointing to a wrong destination and the devil has all the best tunes, or in the war weary that prevented players from completing the quest when Colbert was accidentally killed, or that prevented players from starting the Daughters of Lyrion encounter, Goneril and Cordelia, or an issue in Binding Fate that caused the boss to be stuck on a rock, or an issue where Estrid could get stuck in Taken. I guess she was taken by the ground. Okay, that was cringy. Or an issue in Pluck the Quill, where players would sometimes be unable to interact with Aelwyn. Or an issue in Binding Fate that caused the boss to be stuck underground when using Dive of Valkyrie. That would suck. Or an issue in Price of Wisdom that prevented players from completing the quest. Or an issue in The Boar with the Golden Nose, where the boar would sometimes disappear under certain circumstances. I wonder if that's a cheap reference to James Bond, Man with the Golden Gun. Anyways, who knows? Addressed an issue in Bleeding the Leech, where Erki would be at the wrong location while he was bleeding. Maybe he was off to the hospital. Or an issue in Of the Blood and Bonds, where players couldn't complete the quest or couldn't report back to Randvi. In The Prodigal Prince that prevented players from completing the quest, or that prevented players from completing the Old Cellar mystery, or in a Rivalry for the Ages that prevented players from completing the quest, or an issue where Mary Ludwig disguise would not disappear after finishing the Gloucestershire arc. Everyone liked that .jpeg. I don't get it. I don't remember that. In Road to Harmathia, that prevented players from completing the quest, or where Nud would become stuck in a little problem. Yeah, I guess that was a big problem. Or prevented players from interacting with Uba and Sons of Ragnar. Or Bassam was in a fight with NPCs before the start of Puppets and Prisoners. Or an issue in Brewing Rebellion that prevented players from force opening the door to the Longhouse in Buckingham. There just wasn't enough force. Or an issue in Bridges of Oppression that prevented players from completing the quest. Spoiler incoming, 3, 2, 1. Addressed an issue in King Killer that prevented Ivar to reach the door to Rodri's room. Or an issue in A Friend Out of Hell that prevented players from examining one of the cows. Oh yeah, we're not making that one into a Big Mac. World addressed various misplaced textures or objects, or several instances where the player could become stuck. Grounded a floating boat in Vinland. It was the Flying Dutchman. Gameplay, combat, and AI addressed various NPC behavior issues, an issue where NPCs could sometimes return to a location they fled from that is still being raided, or where whales would sometimes start their fleeing behavior mid-air, or where archery was blocked with M and K holding the shift key, or that caused players' line of sight to be blocked using incendiary or poison traps with the predator bow, or where guards would sometimes not react with hostility to watching Ivor burn members of their faction with oil jars. Moving on. No one saw that. Or where NPCs could be killed by throwing corpses at them in Vinland. Or an issue that removed Bjorn from the ship crew. Or where the mentor set, where the gear perk sometimes didn't activate even though 2 to 4 pieces were equipped. Or an issue that prevented players from controlling the Raven when Q or E buttons were assigned to one of the move actions. Abilities, perks, and skills, an issue where some ranged special abilities could incorrectly be used with guided arrows. Or where one NPC would not leave Ivor's side when Faint Death was used, or where several abilities wouldn't work against hostile dogs, or where a man's best friend would not unlock after completing the quest. A little problem. Yeah, another big problem there. Or where the mentor set where the gear perk sometimes didn't activate again, even though 2 to 4 pieces of it were actually equipped. User interface and HUD just addressed various UI HUD issues, or where the aerial quantity would remain stuck at 12, or language changes weren't applied during combat. The camera will now be closer to the character when browsing tattoos in the anime store, or where colorblind previews would sometimes not be displayed in the menu, or they just couldn't see it, or where colorblind values weren't applied to the Order of the Ancient menu, or where a blank box would appear in the completed quest list, or where fall damage could be negated by opening the menu right before hitting the ground, or where auto loot didn't work when an enemy was stun finished, or where the Rakulf monastery couldn't be raided, or an issue where some icons were missing for newly acquired god favors, or where in-game news sometimes wouldn't load correctly, or an issue that caused players to receive incorrect items when purchasing Vegvisir. That sounds like Vagisil. And anyways, forget that. Front, yeah, it's usually in the front that you do it. And Munin front schemes. Addressed an issue that allowed players to acquire duplicates of Asgardian ship schemes. System added a respawn point just before the boss fight in Extended Family, and addressed an issue that prevented players from fast traveling after 1.0.4, or added force trigger feedback to bow shooting on Xbox and PlayStation controllers, and Stadia addressed an issue that caused the time on the save not to reflect the local time. That appears to be everything. As always, if you liked the video, go ahead, give it a thumbs up. It greatly helps support the channel with the algorithm so that it can make my channel more relevant in the search results when people are looking shit up on Google or YouTube. And if you want to ruin my life, or try to, you want to scheme against me, go ahead, give it a thumbs down. I'll put you in a wrist lock, and I'll snap it off in your ass. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, I mean, naturally, that would be wonderful after all those threats I just said could happen to you. And if not, well, thanks for stopping by anyways. Take care, boys and girls, or whatever it is you identify as, and maybe I'll see at least some of you in the next video. Bye for now.